And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. Back before the holidays. Mark, the people have been asking me throughout the street, throughout the region.
However this sentence ends, I know you're lying.
From the mountaintops as far as Blossburg, people have been asking me, Mark, how are you feeling?
Feel good.
Yeah? You feel all right?
Yes.
All right, let's play some theme music. Dylan, rock out. How are you feeling today, Mark?
I'm good. And since you started with Blossburg, I'll tell you, I'll start in my story. Until I met you, I've heard of Blossburg probably about 3 times.
Okay.
Because it used to be North Penn High School. There wasn't a Blossburg.
Correct.
So
well, there was a Blossburg High School, which
you told
that's
me
a whole
that.
other story.
You
The
told me
Blossburg Blue Dragons.
For a couple years.
Yeah.
So I was just at a convention for new and old county commissioners, and you meet people. Where are you from? Tioga County. And you had told me that one of the commissioners of Tioga County was the former mayor of Blossburg. Yeah. So this guy says, and I don't know who any of these people are, but they're from Tioga County. And I looked at him, I said, "Oh, please don't tell me you're the guy from Blossburg." This is the first sentence out of my mouth. And from this voice from right over here, he goes, "What's wrong with Blossburg?" So then we kind of got into it. I was like, "I'll bet you know Jeff." Since how many people are in Blossburg? Like 30?
No, we're up to, I think we're at like 1,100-ish now.
Is it that
We're
big?
in the 4 digits.
Okay.
As far, yes.
But he did know you, of course, because you're a legend. And,
I'm far from a legend.
That's how the conversation, but it was funny because I just right away. Yeah. And some people, their initial meeting with someone would be more tempered or more, but I just looked at him and said, "Please don't tell me you're the guy from Blossburg."
If you want to be humbled, be a former athlete and then go home and just see what like a 7th grader thinks of you, because they have no idea. They don't know who you are, and they do not care who you are. And you know what? That's good. They shouldn't. Like, they should not. That's my first take. I
will say, what's the dude's name? The former mayor,
Shane Nickerson.
Very nice guy.
Yeah,
very nice guy.
Oh yeah.
So there's at least one nice person in Blossburg.
There's many nice people in Blossburg.
Oh yeah, your dad's a nice guy.
There's more.
Is he from Blossburg?
I love how you're like nitpicking as if like there's not just a plethora of nice people.
I'm just going around you. I don't.
There's a lot of nice people in Blossburg. I have a bunch of stuff here. I have the OpenAI stuff. Thanksgiving's coming up. The Satan School Club that won a settlement. Public school cuts, decorating for Christmas, Thanksgiving, 60 years ago. JFK.
Was it today?
The quote unquote assassination was 60 years ago.
Why do we quote unquote assassination?
Listen, there's a lot of different things floating around the JFK. That's a very fair thing to say.
Well, he was assassinated. It's just which side assassinated.
Well, yes, I guess it depends on your definition of assassination. 100% was killed. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's murdering a public figure is.
I would agree with that as well.
But no, you've seen the JFK movie, the Oliver Stone. Oh, it's brilliant. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's all like.
Well, no, it's his
opinion.
It's his view of what had happened that day, which is what most directors do, right? It's their interpretation.
He certainly brings up a lot of points. I remember my old girlfriend from high school, because that's when it came out, like back in that. Sure. And he's like, I'm not gonna watch it. It's like he brings up a lot of good points. He makes you think a little bit.
I think that's the point of it is I think there's a lot of things where if you say you know what happened,
you're lying.
You're lying. Now you may be right that the thing you think happened did,
right?
But if you're like, I know what happened on the day JFK died, you're probably lying that you know what happened.
Just a little footnote from history. They played, I don't know what day of the week it was. Some historians out there probably do.
Okay.
But they played the NFL that weekend.
Okay.
And was it Pete Rozelle? Whoever the commissioner of football later went on to say that he regretted it and he thought it was one of the biggest mistakes. So the famous.
Oh, you mean playing football that weekend?
Playing football that weekend.
What was his reasoning?
The assassination may have been Friday or Saturday.
Okay, and he just thought it was too soon.
That it was, that the nation needed to
more time.
There is the most famous Mike Ditka. Because Mike Ditka was a tight end. His most famous like catch and run where he's running over people like Bo Jackson was that weekend.
Okay.
So anyway, feed that as a man.
I mean, this may be a little, I don't think it's insensitive. I wouldn't take it as sensitive. When people bring up like We've never had chaotic times like this in politics. And oh my goodness, I don't know, 60 years ago, the president was shot.
Right.
Like, we live in such a hyperbolic world. And I think that's why history's so important in a way. People confuse like being old with history. I don't value necessarily like the being old. I value like the history of like not repeating itself.
Right.
And there's this idea that like, boy, things are so bad. And I don't know, like the president was literally killed in the back of a vehicle 60 years ago.
When I know this goes off into a different topic, but a friend of mine is in Jerusalem. He's a basketball player. When he played at Towson University. He's an Orthodox Jew. So like the yarmulke wearing, and he was in Sports Illustrated as he was dubbed the Jewish Jordan. And he played Division I, good player. Now he's in Israel.
He was supposed to go to Maryland. And then he didn't.
Because
I vaguely remember this story, not from you, but he was like on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
I don't think he was on the cover.
He was on the cover, but he was in it. There was like a story done on him. He was a big deal. He was a big deal.
He almost went to Maryland, and now he's a dad. And he runs his camps, and he is, I don't know if his oldest boy. He's a boy that's 16, who's 6'3". He's really good, and he posted on that these kids are going to practice. They have bomb alert. Like if the sirens go off, they drop the balls and run to a bomb shelter.
Sure.
One of the kids on the team has been kidnapped, and like one of the coaches got called into active duty. And when you're just thinking about like the problems that we have, that we think that this person, that person.
You and I just had a long discussion about like public schools and cutting and the difficulties, and that seems.
And we mean cutting, not like a cycle, like when people try out for
like tryouts, cutting
tryouts,
and that is, I mean, hearing you tell that story, it's so minuscule in the grand scheme of it.
Yes, like one of his teammates got kidnapped.
Yeah,
they don't know where he is.
Yeah.
At least I assume. I didn't follow up, but that was the post. So anyway, yes. So when we go to Thanksgiving tomorrow, we have a lot to be thankful for.
Here was something that was brought up from some of our producers, because we do have midday show producers that provide us questions and topics and things that they want us to talk about. Thanksgiving, Day of Thanks, Day of Giving.
Boy, I love how you piece that together. You're like Columbo.
Do you think that people now are less thankful than 30 years ago? Not to put you on the spot.
I'm not, because I'm older and I get it more. I'm certainly more thankful than when I was young, but as a society,
I always forget you're 52 now. So like 25 years ago when you were 27, did you feel like people were more thankful? Like the people the older people around you and the people your age, like, did they feel like there was more of like a thankfulness for what they had? Or do you think that's overblown as well?
That's a good question. I think if I was to describe as society's gone on, I think we're more entitled.
Okay.
If we're wanted, if we're used to it, like when I was young, to think that like everyone had a cell phone.
Sure.
You had what you could afford. And now it's almost like, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and a cell phone, regardless of who's paying the bill. And it becomes that aspect of life. All the things I think we saw with COVID. We pull up at a drive-through and we don't want to wait.
Sure.
We don't want to sit in line for 12 cars to get our burger, because that's not what I want this and I want it now. And it's
sure.
So I think we're more entitled, if that makes us, I think appreciative goes to each individual journey, to not to sound corny, but I think as you get older, you appreciate things more. Like I know when I was young, this is arguably the greatest night of the year because everyone came home for Thanksgiving.
Sure.
And I know this is the second biggest bar night next to New Year's Eve of the year. And the night before Thanksgiving was a wonderful time. Now, for me tonight, it's a wonderful time from 7:30 to 8.
Where are you going to go?
I'm going to go to my living room and I'm going to watch Jeopardy with my kids because my oldest daughter got home from school Monday. My middle daughter is probably driving. I think she hits the road in about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And my oldest daughter has to go back because she has to work Friday at 3. So all my kids are going to be in Montoursville for about 36 hours. So Jeopardy tonight means to me what like hitting the old corner did 30 years ago.
Boy, I'm trying to think how to take that in without necessarily like mocking
how old I am,
how old you are, because everything you're saying is of value, like having your kids together, you're all together in the same place. So I don't want to be the jerk that like mocks you for like being old, because that's sentimental and it matters and it's important.
I'm pumped.
I think my goal, and this is such a dumb goal to have. It's a dumb goal to have. Me. No, I have no issue getting older. I think it's just, I still think I would want to go. I think there's just something about doing it. And if you stop, you have become old. So I don't know. You know that in my life, I have been in situations where when do you stop doing something is very prevalent. And I have this 50-50 feeling about it, because a part of me is, as a millennial, I am very much like, get out of the way. Like, this is like, things need to move forward and we need to go and get out of the way. And the other 50% of me very much recognizes I don't think I ever want to stop doing a lot of the things I'm doing, because that is giving into my age. And so I don't know. Listening to you describe that kind of contextualizes a lot of it for me, because an hour ago I was like, I'm always going to go out. I'm never not going to go out for Thanksgiving Eve, because that's a sign that things have slowed down or that I have slowed down. But then you just described that and I'm like, like maybe I shouldn't view it that way.
There is an aspect too, and like I said, you're young, and I remember once after my ex and I split, and it was a Friday night, and I was at a football game, and a person I know came up to me and said, "What are you doing after the game?" I said, "I'm going to just go home and watch TV." And they said, "Oh, do you have your kids this weekend?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Well, then why aren't you going out? Why are you going home?" I said, "Because I can go home, I can relax, I can control the remote. No one's going to bother me. No one's going to." So there is, and don't get me wrong, there are times that I still go out, and depending on who's there, it's a blast.
Sure.
But there are other times you kind of force it, and you go out, and you're there for 20 minutes, and you're just like, I could be home. I could be watching. Because right now, what I want to do is start rewatching the Katniss, Hunger Games, because I went to see the new one last night.
Let's jump to that. You saw the new Hunger Games last night. We're crushing this list, by the way. Our segues,
it's like we haven't missed a beat.
Hunger Games. Real quick, I enjoy the old Hunger Games. I was a Hunger Games fan. I actually used to teach.
You taught it, which is brilliant.
I read it. I taught it. Really enjoyed it. Kids ate it up when you can teach it. I know there's stuff in it that some parents don't love.
Murder?
There's some stuff in it that some parents don't love, but I would say this: the kids pick it up and they're actually reading it. And that, when you're like a 6th grade, 7th grade teacher, the fact that kids cannot wait to pick up a book, that is worth its weight in gold.
It is. You're teaching stories from and you taught for a couple years.
Yeah.
That is your best story. That you came in and like, what grade did you have? 7th?
I had 7th and 8th grade, but I had all levels. So I had like high level and I had like bottom barrel.
And the bottom barrel kids don't like to read.
Correct.
Because it's not their wheelhouse.
Yes.
And when you said that you went in and you're like, we're reading the Hunger Games, because for people that don't know, it was a book long before it was a movie.
And just for context, I knew I was being furloughed because of the state budget cuts.
So what are they gonna do? Fire me?
So I knew like late winter, early spring that this, like, the job was done. I did not have a job to come back to. So at that point, I kind of like scrapped a lot of the stuff that had been prepped out and planned. And I just said, like, we're going to have fun and we're going to get kids picking up a book and reading stuff like that. One of my more fun times in teaching, in my opinion, one of my greater successes in teaching.
Right, because they were engaged.
Because they were engaged and they were actually.
They were willingly engaged.
They were willingly, like, I did not have to pull teeth with one student for a whole spring semester. But you saw the new Hunger Games.
I love the originals too. Yes. I thought Katniss was, and I'm not a dark, like gray, apocalyptic.
Love it.
I don't love that genre.
I know you don't, which I still don't fully understand.
Because it's dark and gray.
So
I like bright, as you know.
Get it, but it's exciting. What would happen in those moments is exciting.
Nothing is more exciting than gray. But the new one, people told me it was long.
Uh-huh.
I didn't. It was Oppenheimer. Now, it's not as long as Oppenheimer.
Sure.
I didn't even check what the runtime was. It didn't feel long to me.
Okay.
They broke it up into sections. And this is a part 1 of 2. It's like with the Mission Impossible.
Sure.
It's not, you're not going to get a conclusion to everything.
Sure.
But I thought it was good. I really enjoyed it. If you like the other ones, I don't think anyone will be the first one, because when she turns and shoots the arrow through the apple's mouth, that is just brilliance. But I thought it was really good. If you like the old ones, it's different. It's a little conflicting. I was there with my oldest and my youngest, because my middle daughter, like I said, is driving today. But I leaned over to my oldest daughter, who was like the expert. She probably read the books too. You read all the books, I'll bet.
Oh yeah.
And I even told her, like, I'm struggling with this. And she's like, yeah, I know, but it's just, I think there is it's really good. I don't know if I'm going to say it's great. I need time to sink in, but I thought it was really good.
Yeah. It'll be interesting too, because I think people just have such an expectation, and it's just, how do people handle those expectations? Are they able to let go of them once the story gets moving?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's to what Jennifer Lawrence did with Katniss, and kind of, I think people forget how big that was. I mean, people remember like the Harry Potter stuff and some of the other like long-standing, like you had to see 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way through. Hunger Games was like a huge deal.
Oh,
like when those last 2 parts came out, 3 and 4, like Mockingjay, like that was packed out, like sold out at a time where you couldn't get on your phone and buy your movie tickets like ahead of time. Like you had to go stand in line and force.
I thought one of the brilliant things about hers was her as Katniss was, and we've seen her in other stuff where her personality is so much bigger and so much like the one that she just did this summer, the comedy that she was part of, and I can't think of the name.
Feels Good? Not Feels Good.
Something like that.
Hard Feelings.
Hard Feelings. She's so subdued as Katniss.
Right.
Like it's not her personality that carries it. It's kind of almost her down homeness, and she's supposed to be this little humble, and she did, and I thought that was part of the greatness of her performance. That you get these you get Al Pacino in Scarface, and you get these Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter, and these roles that are just, there's so much subtleness and so much, almost a little bit of teen angst.
Yeah.
But it was in its angst of starvation, and she really portrayed the struggle. Really, really well, and it wasn't a flamboyant performance.
Well, you couldn't have somebody that you looked at and you thought Hollywood, and she did for being like an A-list actress, she did an unbelievable job of pulling that off.
Yes, that's very well put.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I will try to keep this brief. I saw Barbie finally last night for the first time. I think you can look at it from 2 points of views. I love talking about Barbie now that it's been 6 months removed and everyone's already talking about it.
Topical.
I think as a comedy, I think it's funny. If you're just viewing it from a comical lens and you're setting everything else aside, there are parts in it that I thought were hilarious. I think it's a very well done comedy. The world building is incredible. I'm still kind of in awe a day later of kind of how they would have even begun to pull that off. Is really, really neat. Setting all of that aside, and obviously what people were talking about.
While you're talking about pasta, she was great.
Margot, yes, she is. You can't take your eyes off of her for a lot of reasons. I thought her ability to make Barbie seem like a sympathetic figure was unbelievably impressive, because the whole concept of Barbie is she has everything and she is everything, and she's what you would aspire to. And so for her to turn Barbie into like a sympathetic figure was almost, I think, impossible feat that she pulled off. That's a good segue into what I was going to say. The political side of it, which everyone was kind of debating, and when Joe Smith came on, we had a very good conversation about it. The parts that there are some things that Joe brought up that I totally do see. It is 100% Mattel selling you that if you are a woman and you feel bad, Barbie was not the problem. So there is a whole society built around Barbie that is clearly the reason you feel the way you feel. And Barbie was only ever here to empower you. And so I had a very hard time watching it, disconnecting myself from that. I had to almost keep reminding myself, like, I'm just watching a comedy. I don't want to dive into like the weight of all of that.
So it's too deep for you, is what you're saying.
I in a weird way, I think it's very hard to watch it only as a comedy. And now, if you're a young girl or you're somebody who grew up with Barbie, I think you're able to separate it, right? Even if you're a grown woman and you grew up playing with Barbies, it's easier to separate yourself from that aspect of it. I had a more difficult time as a white male, because everyone knows we need more white males. As a white male, I had a very difficult time kind of separating myself from the commercialization of knowing Mattel clearly wants you to know Barbie has nothing to do with how you feel about yourself in a negative way. It is everything else around Barbie that is making you feel this way. And listen, if you're Mattel, they did an unbelievable job doing that. Like, they nailed that message in that movie. Crushed it.
No, I get what you're saying. I hadn't thought of it that way, because there is, there's certainly, because Barbie is a 10.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you were going to bring Barbie to life like we do with Margot Robbie,
sure,
she's not even a 10, she's a 12.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, there is a negative side to this is Barbie and this is what you're supposed to
People
look like.
turned on Barbie for a certain period of time.
Right.
I mean, just this was a figure you could not live up to.
Right.
And that was not good for young girls. That's not my argument. That's what some people were making the argument to be.
That is a whole different movie. Maybe that'll be the sequel. But what they talked about of Barbie empowering people, because when you were young, and my mom will tell you this, and my mom's 79 years old, and she says when she was growing up as a female, you were either going to be a secretary, a teacher, or a nurse.
Sure.
Those were your options. So my mom and her sister went to nursing school. And Barbie was part of the shattering the glass ceiling of you can be more than just a mom, a secretary, a teacher, or a nurse.
Sure.
So there is the positive side, and that's what you said, that they really did sell that.
Yeah.
And by the way, the body image thing is a valid point, and I know what you're talking about. There was a time where people were looking at Barbie and like, you're setting a bar that these kids can't live up to.
And by the way, if I worked at Mattel or you worked at Mattel, they didn't do anything in this movie that I myself would not have been trying to do.
Correct.
If I were running Mattel, I would have been like, we need to convince people that this is not a Barbie problem. That the negative aspects that have been built up now around Barbie, no, society is making you feel. Now, that's a whole other deeper psychological conversation. And I guess what I'm saying, and I actually said this to my fiance and her sister last night who watched it with me, they loved it. And
because they're smarter than you.
They are smarter than me. They are pro-feminist. Like they are very much, that movie was made for them.
Yeah.
That is the best way that I can put it. And they watched the Joe Smith episode. And I said, I will say this. I was personally, there's not one thing in that movie that I'm offended by as a man. Right. Nothing. Because as a comedy, the tropes they hit and hammer you over the head with are funny. Like, it is 100% hilarious. But I do understand how somebody could watch that and would be like, it's anti-patriarchy, it's anti-society, it's anti-family. I do see where if that's your prism, like how you're viewing it, you're not trying to watch it as a comedy. You're not trying to watch it as empowering women. I totally see why that is the viewpoint and why they would dislike this movie. I get it, because I think Mattel's goal was that. The movie was made for young women and women who grew up with Barbie to remind them that Barbie is on your side. It was not made for someone like me. So I do see how someone could watch that and think like, boy, like this is like they're really hammering this or hammering that, and it wasn't for you. Like it was not made for you.
I don't see how the anti-family and the anti-motherhood. That's the part that I disagree with.
The part that you disagree with?
Because what's her name? America. What's her real name?
Ferrera.
Yeah. Because she was a mother.
She's great too.
Yeah, she is really
in
good.
That show.
She is a mother in the show, and when you talk to mothers who have seen it, they don't come away thinking
well,
it's
no,
anti-motherhood. They come away
real quick,
thinking
it's a perfect example because the father is almost non-existent in that family dynamic, right? Now the irony is for years and years and years in movies and TV shows, it was the opposite.
Right.
Like you may have a father-son or a father-daughter, and the mother was just at home or doing whatever. And now they flipped it. And so I think it was eye-opening for some people to be like, well, wait a second, like the dad's right there, but he has almost nothing to do with the family dynamic.
Right.
And that was the criticism. Whether you think the criticism is right or wrong, I'm all ears. Like I think it's a great debate and it's a neat conversation. But I would say to you, I think that's where it comes from. Like that's why people would say it.
And just to prove to be topical, I did see the new Hunger Games last night, and I saw Barbie 6 months ago.
Yes, you were much more on pace with some of this stuff than I was. So yeah, so I enjoyed it, but let's put it this way: I don't think I'll watch it again.
Can you go back, by the way, to Rance's?
Yeah,
he made a comment that I didn't get. Bradley Walter.
Well, Brad gave us a lot of our topics and ideas for today.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay,
so he was just thinking. Rance is also a midday show producer who gives ideas, and so is Ryan Bagacic.
Okay, now if you're ranking our midday show producers, which one sucks the worst?
I can't. It's Thanksgiving tomorrow. I can't. Maybe we do this after the holidays.
Make a stand.
I know. Maybe we do this after the holidays. I do have two.
It's so funny because when we were talking about life before this, you're like, sometimes as adults, we just have to grab it by the balls and make a stand. Yes. And now I put you on the spot. And you're like, I can't.
No, I can't. It's too close to the holidays. I can't do it. I do have a couple of things here. We were talking about public school cuts. We don't have to talk about today if you don't want to, but it's an interesting conversation. There was a Satan school club that won a settlement. I think this is. Let me read 2 paragraphs to just give everybody the topic. An Eastern Pennsylvania school district has reached a settlement with the Satanic Temple in a lawsuit that alleged the district discriminated against students by barring one of the group's after-school Satan clubs from using a school building earlier this year. The American Civil Liberties Union said on Thursday that the Sacon Valley School District had agreed to pay $200,000 in attorney fees and to provide the Satanic Temple and the after-school Satan Club it sponsors the same access to school facilities as is provided to other organizations. This came out from the AP about 3.5 days ago. It's slowly starting to pick up in mainstream media, but I think a lot of mainstream media is avoiding it because of who won and who lost and just all that dynamics. I think there's 10 different things we could talk about here. Is there one you specifically would like to?
Well, I think that there are a few. I think that this is one of the aspects. There's a line in The American President, which you've obviously watched and enjoy, right? Because you're an intelligent person.
Sure.
When he talks about the flag burning and the ACLU and the American Civil Liberties Union, and he says when you stand, he gave some monologue about you standing and preaching at the top of your lungs what someone else is going to preach against, and that's what America is, and that's what makes it difficult. If you really like what we have and you really believe in what we have, then that's the difficulty of me being able to sit here and say, I think it's terrible, and you saying, I think it's perfectly good. Yes. And I can't just say, well, I don't like it, so you can't do it.
The difficulty that you're describing is that no matter who you are in America, 50% of people are typically going to disagree with you. And that is like the comfort but uncomfortableness of America that people have kind of forgotten.
Yes.
Yes.
And so when you come up and they had a Christian club, I guess. What was it called? The Good News Club.
It was called the Good News Club, but it was a Christian affiliated club, according to the AP. Because obviously I wasn't there, but according to the AP, it was a Christian affiliated club.
And so just the common sense of it, when you talk to anyone, should we have a satanic club in high school? No. But it is their right. And there's a difference between like, do I want my kid going? Or should we ban it? It's our constitutions and the rights that we have say that you can't ban it unless it's charging. Now, what's interesting too, why they picked the name, was it for shock value? Was it for marketing value? Because do you still have up what they said what they do at this club?
Yeah, so this is a couple of unique things added to the story, because when you first hear the story, I think I made assumptions when I first heard the story, and then you start to read into it. They had a director of the club, like a teacher in the school, who was like the head, who did not start the club, according to the article I read, but like they came to, because to be a school club,
you need an advisor.
You need an advisor. So this director, June Everett, she became which was another thing. I made the assumption that it was a male. It was a female.
You were picturing Severus Snape, weren't you?
You just kind of make assumptions as you hear a story, and then as you read into it, they're different. One of the things that the group has said, there's 4 students in the group with this student advisor. They said that they have no interest in converting children or students to Satanism. They view it as a literary figure that represents a metaphorical construct of rejecting tyranny over the human mind and spirit. The club program says they focus on science, critical thinking, creative arts, and good works for the community that is not religion focused.
So when I hear that, I was like, why do you pick the term Satan Club then?
Yes.
It's almost like Stranger Things, and that's the first vibe I got.
I agree with you. I'm guessing that the name is simply it's a shock value. It grabs the attention. And it also says that if you're going to have that, you don't have to be a Christian-based group in the school to necessarily do good things. You and I for the next 10 minutes are going to be making broad assumptions about this. And I just want to make sure that people know that. But I find it fascinating. First of all, they settled. The school's going to pay $200,000 to this satanic, I always forget the name of it, because they are sponsored. The club group is sponsored by the Satanic Temple, which I believe is like a national organization. So they are sponsored by the Satanic Temple. I think just the fact that the school lost, I think they lost. They're trying to say they settled. In my opinion, it's a loss. If you're paying
$200,000, you lost.
If you're paying $200,000 and now you're going to do the thing that you said you weren't going to do, which was give them building space that's equal to the Christian organizations, you lost.
Right.
I think it says a lot about public schools and how we have kind of lost sight of how to handle public school settings, because I think early through public school education, the concept was everyone mostly agreed on what should be going on in public schools. And as America has grown and as America has gotten older, people have begun to realize that that separation has grown and grown and grown. And what I as a parent and what you as a parent, or what you as a student and you as a student think is right, isn't necessarily the same thing. And so as a public school system, how do you deal with that? How do you handle that? I don't know.
Well, I think one of the other scary parts is in lots of aspects, but schools, one of people are so replaceable. So how many, because people just get angry and they're like, this is wrong. And I don't like what you're doing, so we're going to stop it. And we've seen it on the other side with teams that pray. And people get irate and like they can't pray on the field and they shouldn't be able to pray before a game and things like that. So what happens, because school board members can quickly get voted out by the angry mob mentality of a small town. And then once the school board member, the solicitor, who is the attorney that is advising the school board, can be fired and replaced, and we can bring in a new attorney, and you can get people who are just in an angry, emotional uproar that's like, we're not having a Satan club, and then they go this and this, and they do all these things, and then they end up in court, and then they end up losing $200,000. Right. Now tell me which school district. What school district is this, by the way?
Second Valley, which I believe, I will look it up here in a second.
It can't be huge.
Well, I'm pretty sure like Lehigh Valley area. Okay. That, just to give people a reference, I will double check that.
But any school district doesn't want to throw away $200,000 because they could use it in many, many better ways. And we have to be careful even if we're angry or even if we're upset or whatever, to listen to the people in charge. And one of the things that we had talked about is our ability to accept disagreement and understand that 50% of the people think the other way. And in this case, it wouldn't be 50%. But do these people that were so angry about this have the ability to listen to the attorney advising them and him say, I think we're going to lose this.
Sure.
And without being afraid of, well, you're going to lose your job. Because if the attorney says, hey, let's go through with it, all he's going to do is make more money.
Sure.
And then, so if you're angry and you want to pay me, we'll go lose. My check clears whether I win in court or not.
Yeah.
Now they may end up losing their solicitor and getting a new one because he lost. But there are times where you have to look at the powers that be and they say, listen, if we allow this group to do it, we have to allow this group to do it. If we, we're going to lose.
Yeah.
And there's some people that won't take that for an answer. Their way is right. And everyone sees it and everyone agrees with me. Well,
so here's the catch-22. Here's the opposite side of it. You've had 3 kids go through the public school system, and little Jimmy comes home and says, like, there was a flyer for the after-school satanic club, like, hanging in school. And I don't know what I would do as a parent. Like, I have the oblivion to be able, because I've never been a parent, to not have to worry about that stuff. However, the story made me question, like, boy, like, I don't know. I wouldn't love it. And here's what's crazy. I'm not religious. Like, you and I have talked about this. Like, I am pro-choice, pro-religion, like, do your thing. It's not my bag. It's not my thing. However, I don't know if I would be thrilled.
But the negative connotation that accompanies
correct.
And my first question would be why? Like, why do you want to do this? And I could see if it's a group of guys.
Yeah, they just want to. They just want to play
Fortnite.
Sure,
we play Fortnite, and that's what we called it because we wanted to.
But I don't know, because for the fact that she's a female has nothing to do with it. But to get a female teacher to go along as the director of the club. I mean, I would, in every school that I've been a part of, it would have been hard to find a teacher to go along.
Right.
So to me, that almost gives a little bit of merit to what they did. It wasn't a group of 4 guys playing Fortnite. Now, we don't know that.
Right.
But like, I would venture that it wasn't just a group of 4 Fortnite playing kids that were just like, oh, let's stick it to Sally and her Christian club.
Right.
And that's not the vibe this story gives off.
Because I'm picturing teenagers.
Yeah.
He wanted to go out with the girl in the Christian club and she said no. So he's like, well, I'll show you. I'll start the after-school
Satan club.
Not that would ever happen. Teenage boys would never think like that.
They're complete. If you watch Barbie last night, they're completely reasonable and have full functioning thoughts, and just depends. I think it's a really interesting.
I wonder
story.
too. Now that you mention it that way, they probably went through and went, because there's rational teachers and whatever, and said, well, legally you have a case.
Yeah.
So then they went back to her and said, well, you're on our side.
Sure.
You know what's happening. You said it's wrong.
Yeah.
So will you support us? And they probably found a couple teachers that said, yeah, it's wrong. But someone said, but I'm not being your advisor.
Sure.
And one said, what do I care?
Sure.
I'll do it.
I would, if this falls into June Everett's hands somehow, I would love for her to come on.
What's her last name?
June Everett.
Her last name is Everett.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's lots of people.
I don't know. Is this a cousin?
I don't think so.
You have lots of cousins.
I don't think so. But if June Everett finds this, that would be a fascinating interview. How did they approach you?
Right.
Why did you say yes? Like, what do you guys actually, now that it's settled, like, what would you guys do if you were an actually functioning club? Because that was the other part of the story as well. The Christian club stepped aside. They basically went on pause. And so the Satan club did the same. So neither club right now is acting. They're not acting clubs that are meeting weekly or monthly or anything else. They've both been set aside.
But I thought when you read it that because the Christian club has been set aside, the Satan club is not allowed to.
No, I don't. Wrong? So when I read it, I don't think it was that they weren't allowed to. It was just kind of like,
okay.
Since you're setting aside, we will set aside as well.
Okay.
But I would like to ask her, like, listen, like, let's say you were meeting right now. Like, what would the after school Satan club be doing? Is it should people make the assumption that your sponsor Satanic Temple and you're doing those things within the club? Or would the club actually be doing the things that were expressed in the story?
All right, so let me do this. Let's run with stereotypes. When you got in your mind right now, her name is June, the advisor?
June Everett.
Your first thought, is June 25 and fresh out of college? Is she 40 and in the middle of
life? There's no middle.
Or is she old?
One or the other.
That's what I was thinking.
I don't think there's a lot of middle. She's either young and it's a
idealistic, whatever.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about people in their 20s is they really care. And if they feel like someone is not, and listen, as the old fuddy-duddy of my friends that are in their 20s, as a 35, 36-year-old, I think it's great, but it's also the only thing that matters to them. Right. Like just having something to root for or cause really matters to them. And it's cool, but it's also, it lacks context and it lacks experience. I catch myself sometimes because there's things I get fired up about. And then I have to remind myself, like, I don't know everything. Like, I'm only 36. Like,
you're not really old fuddy-duddy.
You're really old fuddy-duddy.
That's what I thought too. Because when I threw in the middle-aged one because I thought it was fair. Sure. But my first thought is either this is a teacher who's been there 6 months, or this is someone who's on their way out and like, what are you going to do?
Or it's somebody who's just been in the system for so long and they've seen so many kids not get a fair shot or something not go their way. And they're, like you said, they're on their way out or they're old enough that they just don't care anymore.
Give me your guess.
My guess is it's younger.
That's what I was going to say.
That's my guess. I can try to find out, look her up. I would love, again, I think it would be a fascinating interview to just ask those sorts of questions.
I agree.
So there you go. Let's cross that one off. I do have down here, there was the OpenAI thing, and then I do have Penn State football. Real quick on the OpenAI, because we can talk about kind of the state of Penn State football and how fans should be feeling. The OpenAI thing is fascinating. I've said to you, I think it's a bigger story than what people are making it out to be. They are a nonprofit. They were kind of founded by Elon Musk and Sam Altman and Brockman. These are names that have been in the news as of lately. On Friday, the board got rid of Sam Altman. This is the comparison that I personally think. This would be like the Patriots getting around on Friday and deciding to get rid of Tom Brady, like in his prime.
Right.
And then not telling anybody why they're getting rid of Tom Brady and not really having like a legitimate reason.
Not a great reason.
It's not like Sam Altman didn't have any, there was no police stuff. There was no abuse stuff. Like, nothing Sam Altman did in his personal life was an effect on why they got rid of him on Friday.
So you're saying he's a boring guy?
I think he's a boring guy. I don't really enjoy listening to him talk. I don't find him that interesting. But what he's doing is fascinating. They get rid of him on Friday. Microsoft has invested billions of dollars in this OpenAI because they think it's the next thing. I think it's the next thing. Microsoft reaches out to the board and they're like, we have way too much money tied up in this. You need to reconsider. My understanding of the timeline then is Microsoft, after the board said, no, we're sticking to it, we're not bringing Altman back, Microsoft offered Sam Altman a job to start up their own AI division within Microsoft, brought in Brockman, who is like kind of like the number 2 for Altman.
Because this is what you got to tell that story. They went to the number 2 guy and said, hey, we got rid of your boss. You're going to be the number 1 guy.
And he didn't know yet.
Right.
From my understanding, Brockman was not aware when they came to him that that it had happened yet to Altman.
And his response was?
Like, no, like, I'm going with Altman. Like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but like, I'm following Altman. Within an afternoon, they had 700 offers out to people that worked under Altman at OpenAI to then come to Microsoft to work in this division. And so, but they don't have more than 1,000 workers. I mean, to offer 700 people a job, you're basically taking at a minimum 70% of their workforce. It was probably more than that. And so now you're OpenAI and you're sitting here and you're like, you're not going to have a company. Like, your choices are you either bring this guy back or there is no more company. So Microsoft kind of got their way because Microsoft was not, people were like, wow, Microsoft's going to steal Sam Altman and they're going to, it actually would have been, it was a nightmare for Microsoft because they already put billions of dollars into this thing. They weren't getting the money back. And now you have to pay to build and hire 700 plus employees plus Altman and everything else. Essentially, they were going to be double dipping for the same thing. And so I kind of kept telling people over the weekend, Microsoft is going to resolve this because they don't want to double up. And sure enough, this morning, Sam Altman is now back in charge of OpenAI, and Microsoft now has more seats on the board than what they had before.
Well, didn't you also say that after the second guy, Brock, what's his name?
Brockman?
That he said, no, thank you, I'm going him. Yeah. That then they went to a woman.
So they went, go ahead. So they went to a woman, and the woman said, I'll stay, but I want nothing to do with this. And this is, I thought it was the smartest thing she said. She goes, this is going to be a circus. Like, this is like, I know what's about to happen. I don't want to be in charge of that. She goes, now, if Altman walked away,
right,
and you would have came to me, I'm all in.
Different answer.
Like, this is a great opportunity. But she's thinking to herself, and this is just brilliant. You're coming to me, and I'm about to be like the first lady of AI, which is like the hottest thing right now in the world. I'm going to be like the first lady of it, and I'm going to be inheriting an absolute cluster bomb, as they would say.
Good choice of words.
Great. Well, good choice on her, because
no, I'm just glad you kept it clean. But
yeah,
no, absolutely.
I tried.
That she was wise enough to not.
Yeah, to not take it. So just a fascinating thing. If you're bored this afternoon or this holiday weekend, and you're interested in like a really like cutthroat, it's a mystery, conspiracy, sci-fi, and it's all kind of like real world mixed into one. It's a fascinating story. And the best part of it is we don't even have all the answers yet. It's like every hour, new little tidbits are coming out. This person did this, or why the board voted this, or why Microsoft, how they got in touch with Altman, and just really neat stuff.
Speaking of over this holiday weekend,
yeah,
and people being bored, is Black Friday shopping dead?
Well, it's happening. When you say dead, like, what are you referring to?
Well, there's no malls to go to anymore. I mean, you can hit Target, you can hit Walmart, there are some, you can hit Kohl's, and there are places, but it's just.
I don't mean to pick on you. That was a very like Williamsport thing, I think, to say. Like, I think in other parts of the country, the mall is still there and it's still kicking.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's there. Is it kicking?
Listen, I think in rural parts of the country, everything you're saying is correct, without a doubt. Do I think in like the DCs and the Phillies and the Pittsburghs and all over, like, do I still think that Black Friday is like alive and well and people bundle up and go out? Personally, I do.
Maybe.
But I fully understand what you're saying. Like, in Williamsport, I'm sure it's very different now than like 2013, 2003. Without a doubt. It has to be.
So do you put up Christmas decorations?
I do tomorrow. I don't hesitate at all.
On Thanksgiving Day?
No. Well, sorry. On Black Friday.
Okay, that's what we did.
Black Friday, I get a tree. Like, I go all out, and it's up and it's done.
I wonder how many people on a percentage basis have their tree up. And if it's not Friday because they're shopping or whatever, because I'm sure the women do most of the decorating, and then but by Sunday,
sure,
the tree's up, it's decorated, and Christmas is now here.
I have a handful of people that their trees are up.
I mean, really?
Yeah, because if you don't host Thanksgiving, like, we're hosting Thanksgiving. I honestly, if we weren't hosting Thanksgiving, some of the stuff would probably already be up.
All right, I'm not really a judgmental person, but those people are wrong.
You think so?
You can't have your tree up before Thanksgiving.
Really? Why is that? You go right from Halloween. Go right from Halloween to Christmas?
You can't have a Christmas tree up during Thanksgiving.
Well, if you're not hosting Thanksgiving, though, what's the difference?
It doesn't, because you're still eating. It's still Thanksgiving. You can't.
Yeah, but you're going somewhere else to celebrate it.
It doesn't matter.
I think it does.
It doesn't matter. No,
I think it does.
You can't. I am 100, and I am not. Like I said, I am not judgmental. You can't have your tree up for Thanksgiving. All right, next question. People have said this to me, and I don't know if I've ever really tried it. In the stuffing on the table for Thanksgiving, raisins?
No. I'm not a raisin person.
I've never had it before, but for people who have talked about it, like, I've seen these things online, they're like, like, once you do it, you'll never go back.
Interesting.
I never even heard of it until a couple years ago. This is one of the beauties of Facebook.
My thing is, like, I only eat stuffing once, maybe twice a year. Just, I want stuffing. I don't need it fancy. I don't need to try things. Like, I'm literally doing it once or twice. Just give it to me straight.
All right,
that would be my thing on stuffing.
Next question for you. If you were categorizing all the stuff that comes with Thanksgiving traditionally, is turkey even like top 5?
Well, it's probably top 5 for me, but it's not like, do you want me to list them?
No, you don't have. But we were talking here and with a friend of ours and the person's like, I don't even eat turkey.
Oh,
like, I'll skip the whole turkey.
That's crazy. I wouldn't skip the whole turkey. Green bean casserole for me is like the number one.
I love green beans.
Yes.
I love it.
Stuffing for me is too, because again, it's like, I don't eat it the rest of the year. Like, this is the moment and I'm going to get it and I'm going to eat a lot of it. So like green bean casserole, stuffing, I mean, turkey's probably in that 3, 4, 5 range, depending on what else is on the table. They brought up earlier today, mac and cheese is like the debate. Is mac and cheese a Thanksgiving steak?
Well, I was going to ask you, that was my next question.
Okay.
Do you have an off the wall, and like mac and cheese is a good example. We had when I coached basketball before, we had some Puerto Rican kids on our team, a family, and they were brothers. And I said to them once, how is your Thanksgiving different than the rest of ours? And he's like, well, we have rice and beans he's like, we have all the other stuff.
Sure.
But we always have rice and beans as well. So do you have anything? Do you have macaroni and cheese?
So for years, my aunt crushed this. Cheesy scalloped potatoes.
Oh yeah, we have scalloped potatoes sometimes.
So she knocked it out of the park for years and years and years. So I always associated that with Thanksgiving, and then didn't realize that a lot of people don't do they do mashed potatoes, or do like sweet potatoes or something like that.
Yes, we do those too.
But they don't always do the scalloped, and I just thought everybody in the country did scalloped potatoes. So that would kind of be like my sneaky one.
See, we do sweet potatoes always.
I don't like sweet potatoes.
Oh, they're not bad.
Yeah,
but they're one of those other things. I probably eat them twice a year.
Before we go, do you have any other Thanksgiving questions?
No, I would like to express my condolences to any Washington Commander fans, because we're going to ruin your day for about 3 hours right in the middle of the afternoon.
We have about 8 minutes. I do think we should bring up Penn State football, because we probably.
Oh, and Pittsburgh fired their offensive coordinator. Everyone's been calling for this guy. Every Steeler fan was happy.
Yeah, but that's not as fun. Like, that's not as debatable. Like, that was more consensus.
But he was the fall guy, and now everyone's happy. And when they still can't score for a month, now they're going to have to find a new fall guy.
The Steelers are so boring. They're just boring. I get that we live in Pennsylvania. If you're a Steelers fan and you're honestly going to try to convince me that like the last 5 years the Steelers have been like fun, they're boring. They're so.
I'll give you that.
You're a middle of the road who just can't bottom out, and it's boring. Penn State is more fascinating because they are stuck in this limbo, and I think half the people hate it. They don't know. They don't know what they want, but they know that whatever this is, it's not. They
want to be better.
Yes. However, you and I have been harping to you, not at you, because I don't think you disagree.
I don't disagree.
I have been harping to you, if you're going to get rid of Franklin, if the people who are like, you have to get rid of him, he can't do it, who is the person then? Because my argument for almost a decade now to anybody who's been like, oh, Franklin, who are you getting that is better? Because I'm telling you right now, being a top 12 team in the country consistently isn't very bad when you consider how quickly it can go off of the rails. And go ask Texas, and go ask USC, and go ask Nebraska, go ask these other programs who thought we'll just go get the next guy. And it just never happened. It just didn't.
Wisconsin, Florida, Miami, Florida State is good now. It's been a long time. It is hard when we've talked about this a lot, mostly off the air. But yes, Penn State is not one of the elite programs in college football. Who is Alabama and Georgia and Michigan and Ohio State, and Oklahoma's fallen off, but they were there for a while. Clemson seems to be falling off, but yes, if you pick LSU, if you pick the top 6 or 7, Penn State's not one of them. If you pick the next 6 or 7, Penn State is clearly one of them.
But can I argue against that? I understand what the polls say, and people smarter than me are deciding who goes where. I would argue that realistically, you can make the argument that Ohio State and Michigan are 2 of the best 4 teams in the country.
Yes.
I don't know if they'll both get into the playoff, but if this is a close game, if this is like a 1-possession game, I think anybody who would say they both should be in has a very fair point.
Yes.
So if you're Penn State and your argument is, listen, we may not have great wins on our resume, but our only losses are to 2 of the best 4 teams in the country by almost a possession. Like 1 possession is the difference in the score. I would argue that if someone came up to me and said, I think Penn State's one of the best 7 teams in the country, best 6 teams in the country, I wouldn't argue against them. Now, if someone came and said, I think they're 13th, I wouldn't argue against them.
Right.
But to your point, they are clearly in that next 6 to 12. And I just can't express to Penn State fans enough. You are so unbelievably ungrateful for the fact that you are solidly, that is your basement right now. Your basement is you are a top 15 football program in the country. And there are teams that never get back there. Ever.
But I do understand the people who, how long's Franklin been there? 8 years, 9 years?
No, I think he's 10 plus now.
So, but their basement, like right now, they are clearly the third best team in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
But their ceiling is 3.
Okay.
And that's it for those people who say he has proven he is not getting us to the next run.
But who are who
I'm
are you?
The next guy you bring in may take you to 9th.
Yes, and I won't beat that dead horse. My question would be like, who are you Penn State fans that you think like that you should just be better than Michigan or Ohio State, or like you had a lot of years where you were not one of the best 4 teams in the Big Ten, one of the best 5 teams in the Big Ten. You were clearly, without a doubt, the 3rd best program in the Big Ten, and that is your basement. Now that may shift. May shift with some of the other teams coming over. We'll have to see how that plays out because you have USC coming, you have Oregon, Washington, all these. Right. But I'm just saying, like, there were years where Paterno, you weren't even close to being one of the best 3 teams.
No, I get it, but they see what Dabo did at Clemson, and Clemson's this elite program, but they hadn't been for decades, and the one guy came in and changed it. They see what Kirby Smart did at Georgia, and Georgia they were always good, but they were never great. Mm-hmm. And now Kirby Smart has come in and Georgia is the team. Mm-hmm. And you know what Nick Saban at Alabama has always been good, but it was since the Bear Bryant days that they were dominant. And they've had, Ray Perkins, and they've had Mike Shule. They've had some duds as head coaches. And so that, yes, for all these schools, there is one guy that can come in and change it. But look at what's happened to Florida since Urban Meyer left.
But I guess my argument would be, and I'm not even necessarily like a Penn State fan. My argument to them would be he didn't. Like, think like where you were through those late Paterno years and then into this early, like through O'Brien and into this. Like, I would argue you have the guy. Like he did the thing that most people couldn't do.
They've certainly not failed.
Do you get what what I'm saying?
They've not reached the pinnacle, but they are far from an embarrassment.
Yes.
And it is
how quickly people have forgotten. It is and absurd.
Again, you're right. Like, go look at Wisconsin, who used to be this, and now they're not.
I used to, because I'm like probably my biggest sports fandom is North Carolina basketball. Like, I just love Dean Smith, and then I remember.
And your second is Duke basketball.
I love hating Duke basketball. It's probably the second thing I like doing the most is hating Duke basketball. But I remember like when Roy Williams came to North Carolina, and there was like this, I don't even know how to explain it, but there were people that like wanted to get rid of Roy. And I was like sitting there and I was thinking to myself, like, do you forget what happened after Dean Smith left? Like, they brought in Guthridge.
They went to the Final Four.
I can't even,
took him to the Final Four.
I get it. With Dean Smith's players.
Oh, that's valid.
Okay. They brought in Guthridge. I can't even remember who they brought in because there was
wasn't it Matt Doherty?
Matt Doherty was there. There was one more, I think. I think they had 3 guys before they finally convinced Roy to come over after the Kansas National Championship game against Syracuse.
Right. I thought, okay, but go
on.
And
I remember people would want to get rid of Roy. And I just remembered, like, as a teenager, like in college, I remembered, like, listening to people talk, and I'd be like, I was like 13 and I was wondering if we were ever going to be good again.
Right.
Like, I was like, I don't know if North Carolina basketball is going to ever make the Final Four again. And then here's this guy who clearly has us in the top 3 of the ACC consistently. And you guys are like, well, we got bumped out in the Sweet 16. Everyone's getting bumped out in the Sweet 16. Like, it happens to everybody.
Right.
Coach K got bumped out in the first round, like consecutive years. Right. Like, so I just look at Penn State fans and how quickly we forget. Like, just how quickly they have totally lost sight of where they were and where they are.
Well, and I know you got to get going, but yes. I remember having this argument with Steeler fans back when Steeler fans were like, well, we don't need Antonio Brown because he's an idiot. And
Sure.
we don't need Le'Veon Bell because he's an idiot. And I was like, well, but just because you wear black and gold doesn't mean that guys that come in here are going to be Pro Bowlers.
Sure.
They're incredibly talented. And then they got rid of, and they haven't had a great receiver since. And they got rid of Le'Veon. They haven't had a great running back since.
Right.
And then I would tell people, like, Ben is covering up all of your
stuff.
And now all of a sudden Ben's gone. Now people are like, Kenny Pickett sucks. Or he doesn't have any talent around.
I'll try to keep this story short. I have a great story. I grew up a Colts fan because of Peyton Manning. And so I grew up with Peyton Manning. They draft Andrew Luck. And so after Andrew Luck mysteriously retired, I just thought the next guy would be great because the only experience I had ever had. So then my cousin is a Packers fan. So he went through Favre and then he went through Rodgers. And so like they draft Jordan Love. So the whole Rodgers thing's happening. He's like, we're fine. Jordan Love's ready. We're good. And I was like, you're going to go through the same thing that I just went through because I thought the same thing. I just thought we're the Packers or we're the Colts. We'll roll out a quarterback and it's all. And now like Jordan Love's been better, but clearly Packers fans are realizing like, oh, like just because they put on a green jersey doesn't mean they're the next.
Going to camp.
Yes.
No, I do like, I don't love Najee Harris, but I like the other kid and I can't think of his last name, but the Steelers have a running back now that I really like.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're ordinary. And it's, you know, when you have these exceptional guys, that's a perfect example.
Yes.
Hall of Famer. Just because a guy dresses in the Green Bay locker room and takes snaps doesn't mean he's going to be a Hall of Famer.
I agree. I just think Penn State fans, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, Penn State fans need to be more thankful. That's all.
But
I'm not saying they have to be satisfied. They don't have to be satisfied.
Okay, that's fair.
But they should be. Fair. But I'm telling you, they should be thankful.
It could be a lot worse. It could be a
disaster. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. We appreciate it. We'll try to be on more and more often. Thank you to Brad Walters for all of today's topics. Really, really appreciate the Midday Show producers. Anybody you want to thank quickly?
No, I just hope my kid gets home safely. That's where I've got to in life.
That was cute.
She's driving home from New York, and I hope she makes it safely.
There you go.
Because this is also the busiest travel day of the year.
Yes, it is.
To go along with the busiest, second busiest bar day, it is the busiest travel day of the year.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Safe holidays. We'll see you guys.